There is a section towards the end where I focus on solutions, because obviously that's the most important. So you know, there's a lot of information, and it does end on a happy note with quite a lot of solutions. So let's begin. Okay, so this is the electromagnetic spectrum. Everything towards the right, towards, you know, the X-rays and gamma rays, that's always been known as ionizing radiation, which has always been known to cause harm to the human body, i.e. cell death. Everything on the left, more the radio and microwave, has been known as non-ionizing radiation and has been thought to be safe. But as time is going on, more and more proof is coming out that non-ionizing radiation is far from safe. As you can see here, one thing to remember is the lower the frequency, the further it will travel. Keep that in mind, because later on in the talk I talk about these 5G satellites and all that nonsense, and so that's something to keep in mind. So there's four main types of electric fields. You've got a simple electric field, which comes from electrical wiring, sockets, lighting, computers, that sort of thing. Then you've got an electromagnetic field, which usually involves motion and magnets. So you've got electric motors, refrigerators, mains supplies. Hair dryers is an interesting one. I had one lady I was helping a lot, and she went for hair analysis, and the analysis came back with very high radiation. And we talked through everything she was doing, and it worked out she was a bit of a gym bunny and was constantly in the gym and using a hair dryer 3 or 4 times a day. There's quite a big magnetic field coming from a hair dryer, so you shouldn't really put it too close to your head. Water distillers also kick out a very big magnetic field. I don't really think it does the water much good, the energetic qualities of it. And then radio frequency, which in my opinion is probably the most important. And then with an electric field and a magnetic field, they're safe with distance, and you can kind of have common sense, you know, not to go too close to a laptop and things like that. But with radio frequency, you can't tell how much, how close. And obviously that's your Wi-Fi, anything wireless, your smart meters, Bluetooth, phone masts, deck phones. Deck phones are your walkie-roundy phones, the wireless phones. And then you've got dirty electricity, which a lot of people who live in houses with solar panels, they have a big problem with that. Lighting, dimmer switches, LCD screens, especially your Apple computers, which don't have a separate box, you know, it's just the screen. They give off a very high amount of dirty electricity, so it's good not to get too close to those things. Cordless phones. And you can measure dirty electricity. Anybody can do this with a simple radio. The one I use, we do a lot of home radiation assessments as well, and the one I use is a cheap one from Argus. It just costs £7.50. It's battery operated, old school AM, FM radio, and you can tune it in between stations, and you can walk around your house switching things on and off and listening over the radio to the dirty electricity. It's kind of like bad harmonics, which travels along your 50 or 60 hertz home wiring. Okay, so this slide is a bit worrying. Here we can see the safety limits of every other country, and then you look at ours, USA and UK, and also Canada, and our safety limits are off the scale ridiculous. And this is how they can roll out all these dangerous technologies and get away with it. And it's because of these idiots, really. They're called ICNIRP, they're like the governing body, and they have this mannequin which they fill with water. It's meant to weigh 1 kilogram, and they strap a device to it, like a mobile phone, and unless the water in that mannequin heats up 1 degree in 6 minutes, that's considered safe. So it's only measuring the thermal effect, and obviously it's kind of a ridiculous test. So you look at sources of EMF in an average house. Cordless phones are very bad. I always say to my customers, if you have one of these, throw it away and replace it with a wired terminal. Wi-Fi routers, especially the modern Wi-Fi routers, are getting ridiculous. You've got baby monitors, which I think are a bad idea, and then your smart meters, your gas, your electric meters, and even water smart meters. Cell phone towers could be close by. Collectors where all the smart meter information gets relayed to a collector, and the collector sends it back to base. And you've got your appliances, your white goods, your cell phones, microwaves, laptops. So there's plenty in an average house which is going to cause a little bit of harm. What I'm seeing a lot is with young children, it used to be a dummy or a rattle which used to keep a child occupied, and now it's more an iPad or an iPhone, and they're playing games, listening to things. With a small child with an iPad, I've got a bit of a hatred with iPads. You can reduce the radiation if you use it whilst it's not charging. They've got a very long battery life. And it gives off a lot more radiation while it's charging. Now, I did a test on an iPad, and I could completely reduce the radiation to nothing by using an ear tube headset. Now, if you look how the child holds an iPad, it's always right next to the genitals like this, and all of the radiation comes through the bottom, and it's a magnetic field which is the concern with an iPad. Now, the magnetic field with the iPad goes in tune with the sound, the volume which is coming out of it. So if you're holding an iPad here and you've got the volume right up, the magnetic field is peaking with the volume. Now, you can plug in a pair of headphones, but then you're transferring the magnetic field to your brain, which is a daft idea. But if you use an ear tube headset, and the cheap ones off eBay, they're only £3 or £4, they work just as good as the expensive ones, and they will completely reduce the radiation to nothing. The child should also have a cushion on his lap, so he's got distance. Distance is everything with an electric and a magnetic field. It reduces a lot with distance. And also, one thing to note with an iPad is the brightness is always far, far too bright. You can get a blue light filter app, or you can get some glasses, but what I've done with my iPad is turn the brightness right down. A reason why I hate iPads, right, this is, now iPads aren't really Apple, they're a mixture of part Apple, part Microsoft. They're made by a company called Artemis. And Artemis just happened to be the goddess of fertility and childbirth. Their logo just happens to be an inverted uterus. Their headquarters here just suspiciously looks like a female egg with the embryo being electrocuted and the sperm swimming the wrong way. So it says a lot about their company. And what I sometimes wonder is, what does the I in iPad stand for? Information, internet. For me, it's infertility, because they had to get their numbers in here, but fertility rates, according to them, dropped 66% after iPhones and iPads became popular. So I think if your children do have iPads, just be a bit wary of the dangers it can cause to their reproductive organs. As well, now you see gaming. I mean, these controllers are all also held right next to the genitals. The wireless controllers, they emit radio frequency radiation, and the wired controllers emit an electric field, and they're right next to the child's reproductive organs. Now, all of your modern games consoles emit RF radiation, and it can't be turned off. There's a good video on YouTube, and it's just called Xbox is a Weapon. I think it's still on there if it hasn't been removed. And it shows a guy measuring the radio frequency coming from an Xbox. and you can't switch it off. If you call them, they'll say it's searching for a Wi-Fi network. You say, well, it is connected to the Wi-Fi, and it still carries on searching. So we make Faraday cages for the games consoles, just like we do for the Wi-Fi routers and the smart meters. So our poor children are being targeted a little bit. I mean, look at the state on this graph. It shows typical child radio frequency exposure in a classroom. I was born 1977, so when I was in school there was very little. And I mean, you could say that graph is shooting off the scale there. I mean, now you have kids in classrooms, and every single classroom has a Wi-Fi router, every child has an iPad. So you can see how it's escalating. So this is a study with military personnel. I mean, big burly guys, very fit men, and this was what happened to them when they were exposed to EMF radiation. And you know, there's depression, neurasthenia, that's just a general feeling of bad feelings. Anxiety, but we've got number 5 there, lack of concentration. Number 11, increased irritability and loss of memory, which is kind of like ADHD, which they're saying all the kids have got nowadays. So it's kind of like an excuse, you know, if the kids are feeling fried with all the Wi-Fi, or they've got ADHD, just give them some pills and they'll be fine. So as you grow older, then sometimes your job can be your worst environment. I mean, this is a typical office. They're doing some things right, they've got hardwired phones, but everyone is sat far too close to these boxes. Some have got 2 screens each, and everyone's got their mobile phones on, you know, it's just all building up. And I've only been in one call centre, but it was ridiculous, and a lot of the radiation here is actually coming from the floor, because all the wiring is underneath the floor. But again, everyone's using the headsets, everyone's too close to a screen. Even if you want, you've got some time off, you want to go shopping, you're still getting blasted everywhere you go. Now, because I deal with a lot of electrosensitive people, I noticed a bit of a pattern that none of them can step foot into a supermarket. So I thought, well, I'll have a bit of a closer look at what's going on in a supermarket. Now, if you were to strip all this colourful, sugary rubbish off the shelves, you will find this amount of clockwork. So there's an electric motor there nearly every step you take down the supermarket aisle on both sides of you. And also these are, I think they're like computer controlled for the CO2 and the temperature. But there's a hell of a lot of clockwork going on behind these refrigerators, and they kick off a very, very high electromagnetic field. Now, if you imagine your food is sat on top of this, you know, it's not going to do like the cellular life of your food much good. And also in supermarkets now, I don't know whether you've seen them, they've got all these Wi-Fi routers hanging from the ceiling and all sorts. And okay.
I'm really fascinated by what you're saying, and I've got a hell of a lot of questions to ask you.
Yeah, well, towards the end we can have questions. So next I talk about driving, because I think this is overlooked a little. I mean, obviously this guy's using his mobile phone, which he shouldn't be, but he's also Bluetoothing, is it an iPod or whatever it's called, Bluetoothing his music. He's got his sat-nav going, and you're kind of like in a Faraday cage there, so that a lot of these frequencies are building up. 65, that's the wiring of a Ford truck. And you can see that's quite a lot of wiring going on there, and that is nothing electric there. It's in an old vehicle, nothing electric. Compared to a modern day car, with all your gizmos, your bits and bobs, this is the extent of the wiring in a modern car, which is going, I mean, the rear table there is probably for the rear of the car, and there's probably another table here for the engine, and these are both sides of the car. It's all going together in looms, cables inside of cables, which is running parallel to you down the doors. So here's a list of everything in a car which gives off radiation. It's ridiculous. There's absolutely everything in there. But you know, it's not just you're sat behind an alternator, you're sat behind a big motor, you're sat behind the fuse box, you're sat behind the spark plugs going crazy, and you're sat behind the battery. So you've got all these things to consider, and I don't think there's much in the way of travel sickness when you're like movement in the human body up and down, you would get travel sick, but not really left and right. So I think a lot of travel sickness is getting confused with just simply being fried with all the radiation. You could also live close to one of these. Everyone knows there's clusters around these places of high levels of leukemias and cancers. And what they do around these places, to prevent stray voltage, they put an extra cable into the ground. So I've seen some farmers have had real problems with cattle, and they're lifting their legs in time with the spikes of the radiation going through the ground. So if we look at the strength of microwave technologies, what is right at the top is holding a mobile phone next to the head. So that's one thing we should all stop doing, really. Now if you look down here, Wi-Fi laptop on your lap, it's 10 times worse, and they kind of put a stop to people putting laptops on their laps. People got, you know, wise to the radiation so close to the genitals. That's why they started calling them notepads instead of laptops. Well, you know, we went through a habit there and we fixed it, so I think we really need to stop holding the mobile phone next to your head. Now with children, this is just like a 10-minute phone call on a mobile phone, and you can see with a 5-year-old child the radiation is almost hitting the far side of the head compared to an adult. And the reason being is because the children, their skull isn't fully formed yet, it's still soft, it's still growing, so the radiation passes through a lot easier. So I think it's children should be a certain age, I think, before they have a strong mobile phone. So even in the small print of an iPhone, it's saying that the SAR measurement, that means specific absorption rate into the brain, just like what we were just looking at. It may exceed the FCC exposure guidelines for body-worn operation if positioned less than 15 millimeters, 5/8 of an inch from the body. So that includes obviously keeping the phone in your pocket, or some people in their breast pockets, their back pockets. It's a bad idea. It's best to keep it in a bag or somewhere away from you. And a bit of proof here from this guy, Professor Agarwal. He found that men who keep their cell phones in their pockets for over 4 hours a day have only 50% of the sperm count of those who don't. So obviously important if you're trying to have a baby, and it's obviously affecting fertility rates. So mobile phone masts, these are springing up like daisies all over the place. A lot of people ask me what these funny looking towers are. They're called a compact monopole mast. Now if you were to Google it and try to research what these things do,
Monopole, did you say?
monopole mast. So it will say that these are for filling in areas of low mobile phone reception, which I'm not quite sure is entirely true, because I think it's a possible carrier wave for 5G, because wherever these things have been placed, sooner or later a 5G mast springs up next to it. So there is a lot of people saying that it's a possible carrier wave which makes the 5G frequency go further. So you've got the radiation pattern of a cell phone tower. So people living within 50 to 300 meters are in the high radiation zone. And as I said, you know, around these places you've got a lot of leukemias and cancers, people who have lived there a long time, mostly going to suffering from cancer, things like that. So this is just off Mast Data, I think the website is called. This is my local city of Newport. This was a few years ago which I put this slide up, so there's probably more now. But that's about maybe a square mile, if that, and there's 38 phone masts here. So our poor land is being absolutely saturated with all the mobile phone frequencies. Now this doesn't look like Newport anymore, but what I'm trying to say here is that they hide a lot of the masts. You know, not all the masts are visible, and that you know that they're there. Obviously, there's one being hidden here in a cactus, but it's not just wherever that was abroad. It's happening here in the UK as well. A friend of mine actually worked for this company. They're called the Undetectables. And as you can see here, there's a fake chimney. Now, when I did this talk down in Devon, a guy came up to me and he said on the motorway on the way down, this is on the Sunday, that he went past a lorry full of these fake chimneys. So it's a bit evil the way that some of them are being hidden. And they're also, I mean, this is the side of a building and there's an antenna shroud right outside this. I mean, that could be somebody's bedroom, completely hidden. Nobody would even have any knowledge it was there. And they're also hiding them between advertising boards, and I've also seen some sneaky ones hidden in petrol stations behind the signs. This is another old pic. They kind of changed this website, but that is kind of heat signature, radiation heat signature of London, and that's probably everybody's Wi-Fi and all the mobile phone masts. And as you can see, it's completely saturated. So you have to sometimes think, well, what effect does this have on wildlife? All of these animals here use Earth's own magnetic fields to find their way around, and it's all being altered. This is a very good film. It was on YouTube. It was produced in 2013. It's called Resonance, Beings of Frequency. A lot of studies, a lot of research went into that film, and some of the info is here. I mean, at the time this film was produced, we had 5 species of butterfly gone extinct in Britain, 109 species of Arctic migratory birds have declined, 36 species of Australian shorebirds have decreased in numbers by 75%, and it just goes on and on. 50% decline in all European grassland butterflies. Bee numbers have dropped up to 70%, and we all know how important bees are. Half of Britain's bee species have declined by up to 70%, 4 species of American bees, farmland birds, and we've got 190 bird species facing imminent extinction. And the guy who did this study said something has to be done very quickly before, you know, a lot of our big bird species and wildlife is gone. So, smart meters. I mean, everyone's getting plagued by these people come and fit a smart meter. Usually when I do talks at health shows and places like that, everyone's too awake to have a smart meter, so you don't usually find many people who have them. In comparison, one smart meter is 4 times the Russian and Chinese safety limit. So you can see there again another example of how our safety limits are completely letting us down. Now, the worst part about smart meters, I've seen this a few times, is if you live in an apartment block, you could be unlucky enough to have a whole block's worth of smart meters for the whole building right next to your apartment. And one way to deal with that is to cover the whole wall in shielding fabric. Now, here's some pulses which have been recorded. If you ask or to ring the companies involved in fitting smart meters, they will say to you, oh, it's no worry about the radiation, it only sends information 2 or 3 times a day. The readings here, I mean, they've recorded up to 190,000 pulses per day. Now the thing with pulsed radiation, if I was to go close to a laptop or some lights or whatever, my body kind of recognises that field and my immune system kicks in and I have an immune response. When it's pulsed and it's on, off, you don't seem to have an immune response, and that's why smart meters are causing so much ill health, because it's pulsed and the pulses are very strong. You can see here compared to an iPhone, and these smart meters are outside the building, and it's very similar to the peaks of an iPhone here. You can see the iPhone is sending a text. The phone is put in airplane mode here. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But airplane mode has obviously cut off all wireless activity. But compared to the smart meter, and that's 24/7. You know, I mean, with the phone you can switch it off at night, do what you want. But with the smart meters, they're constant 24/7. So the problems we find with smart meters, I think the most common is general fatigue. People who are especially too close to their smart meter, you might find you might need an afternoon snooze when you never used to need one. Ringing in the ears, problems sleeping, headaches, learning problems, heart problems that can affect the arrhythmia of the heart, as you were saying, balance problems, leg cramps, and eye problems, obviously, because your eyes are kind of outside of your skull, aren't they? So next we're going to talk about Wi-Fi. I mean, you just cannot get away from Wi-Fi everywhere you go. Schools, offices, everyone's homes, everyone has it. The reason I've got this guy here, he's going to do some internet surfing, is I want you to understand how we measure hertz, which is in cycles per second. So obviously, if one wave was crashing on the beach each second, that would be 1 cycle per second. So if we look at Wi-Fi, it's quite a lot of cycles per second, 2,400 million cycles per second. So that is a hell of a lot of information coming along that frequency. Now this is what you need to look out for. In my opinion, my advice, do not upgrade your router. The older the router you have, the better. I've still got my old little Sky router, which I've probably had about 20 years now. It still works fine. And compared to these modern routers, which are dual, sometimes tri-band, with multiple internal antennas, it is tame, very, very tame compared to the modern ones. So these are the two you have to look out for. Y-gig routers or Wi-Fi 6. Now, with your Y-gig, this is ultra-fast, ultra-high frequency wireless internet. It's millimeter wave, so it's beamforming, 60 gigahertz, and it uses beamforming technology at close proximity to the router. So the way this works, you have to be line of sight, okay? So you'd have the really fast connection. Sometimes they have antennas and you can point them towards where you're working, different channels for different things. Apparently it's very easy to block. You can put up a cardboard box and it will block it. But must be in
Wasn't that with 5 gigahertz though?
Sorry?
That was with 5 gigahertz.
Yes. Yeah.
But,
about 60
but not 4 gigahertz, but 5 gigahertz was basically seen as the stationary wave element.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's the lower end of the 5G.
It may be an opinion, but is it accurate?
What's that?
Your opinion in regards to the evidence?
Well, it's 60 gigahertz Y-gig. Y6 is your dual band, so that's your 5 gigahertz.
Yeah, but you got 2.4, which is actually lower than 5 gigahertz, which is standard.
Yeah, so your 2.4 gigahertz is the frequency which will penetrate. It will penetrate walls, it will penetrate all sorts of things. So obviously it's going through your body. The higher bands are more kind of line of sight. Like with your 5 gigahertz, if you go upstairs, you probably lose that and it will drop to 2.4 gigahertz. But your Wi-Fi 6 is kind of designed to connect multiple devices. So with your Wi-Fi 6, you'll hear the word mesh mentioned.
Yes,
so you have all these, you'll have a little mesh box on the wall which gives off ridiculous RF.
Yeah, but
that'll be linked to your Wi-Fi router. And you also have these little extenders which you're meant to place all around your house to increase the signal around your house. And the tri-band routers will all use all 3 frequencies. I just want to show you quickly, if you type into Google Images, these are your typical wide gig routers. So some of them look pretty nasty, like they'll come to life in the middle of the night and eat your dog. But you can see what we're dealing with, in multiple antennas. Yeah. You know, very scary looking things.
I threw my one out last week.
Excuse me, would you mind being quiet? He isn't just talking to you, he's talking to all of us.
Yeah,
We've been interrupting him all evening.
Yeah.
So
we'll have some questions at the end.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so it's time to talk about 5G, what everyone's been dreading. Now, one thing I will say about 5G, everyone talks about the radiation. I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think 5G, if you look at where China's going, if you kind of imagine like a digital prison, 5G is your prison bars. It's kind of like a seed where all the technology will grow from. It should never have started. It's the start of something very, very evil, the start of control, the start of microchips, the start of all that. It's all based on 5G. So what is it? It's extremely high frequency. Remember I said with frequency, the lower the frequency, the further it will travel. Well, extremely high frequency, it doesn't travel very far at all. So that is the reason why there's going to be thousands of small antennas, and they'll be on rooftops, they'll be on little masts all around the place, they'll be on lampposts. And it involves huge tree loss, because as you've heard, trees, 5G signal doesn't like trees, it breaks up the signal. So we're going to see huge tree loss, and massive MIMO is something which needs to be understood. Whereas there used to be an antenna on its own, you'll see an antenna which is a 5G antenna, and inside there'll be another 100 antennas. You know, it's multiple input, multiple output, so you'll have many antennas put into one antenna, so it's a lot worse than what it looks. Very daft technology, which uses millimeter waves, and like I said, the digital prison, this is the start of the Internet of Things, where they want absolutely everything having a microchip and being connected to the internet. So just an example of that, you might have a milk bottle. Everything's got a barcode nowadays, but soon it will have a little microchip. So you put that milk bottle in your smart fridge would scan it, and then you might get a text then saying on your way home saying get some milk because you've got none left. You know, that's the way it's all going. But these little microchips, which are going to replace barcodes, it kind of runs off 26 gigahertz, and they're all made of graphene. 26 gigahertz is apparently going to be rolled out sometime this summer. It's already gone live in some places. But if a graphene is resonant to that frequency, and everyone's been vaccinated with graphene, who knows what will happen. Yeah, this is where I like to mention 5G, this Elon Musk nonsense in my opinion. Nothing really has ever come from a satellite. Satellites were coined by a guy called Arthur C. Clarke. It was fiction, and in my opinion it's still fiction. I'm a qualified mechanical engineer, and in my opinion a satellite is an engineering impossibility. We have to learn melting points of different metals, expansion, contraction, electronics, pneumatics, hydraulics, all of that. And yes, satellites are an impossibility. So if you look at the lies which have come before, if you're old enough to remember, they used to tell us that mobile phones came from a satellite, and now everybody knows mobile phone signal comes from a mast. The second lie was satellite TV. That again comes from a mast, it's just a digital wave, and you can even Google where it's broadcast from. Second lie. And the third lie, possibly the biggest one, is satellite navigation. I would say it's probably impossible to get satellite navigation from a satellite, especially if they tell us the world is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, and one of these is meant to tell you to take a left at a little roundabout in the middle of nowhere. I mean, come on guys, really think about it. You know, this is just an example of people just going along with the information they're given. And so a typical example here is SatNav, for example, uses 1.1 to 1.6 gigahertz. So, as I said about the distances, that should travel about 25 kilometers, if you're lucky. Satellites are apparently between 160 and 2,000 kilometers away. Now, the reason why I think they're trying to tell you that 5G comes from a satellite, in my opinion, is because they want you to think there's nothing you can do about it. When in reality, we know that 5G is coming from all of these little antennas, rooftops, lampposts, things like that. I actually watched one of these satellite Starlink videos, and I laughed all the way through it. And at one point I could see something dripping from this glowing red ball of flame. Complete nonsense in my opinion. So beamforming, this is kind of dangerous technology which focuses streams of high intensity wireless radiation straight at you. Apparently it doesn't matter whether you've got a 5G handset or not. It can pick up like a picture of your body and go from that. Now, I was racking my brains, how do I protect people from this sort of technology? And as I was going to bed one night, I could see a vision of looking down from above, and these people had like a protective circle around them, and then it kind of came to me, it's like, why don't you just make an umbrella out of shielding? So I've made that. There was a company in Cardiff who make umbrellas, and I approached them, and at first I had this like mylar material which didn't work, it wasn't stretchy enough. So they were very nice to add a little bit of PVC to make it stretchy, and that blocks up to 30 gigahertz. So I wasn't quite sure, is this a good idea or not, but this is the prototype. I'm kind of looking for funding for that because I don't really have enough money to get it off the ground. But it's kind of like a short solution, you know, if you want to pop into a city centre and you want to hide from all this technology, which is basically blasting beams of radiation at you. How are we doing for time? So, as you know, Facebook is trying to get everyone onto Meta. Now this is very scary because, as you know, Meta is virtual reality. They're going to put everything into this virtual world. So to log into Meta and to use Meta, you need 5G internet, which involves one of those nasty routers which I talked about earlier. About a year ago, a lady sent me, she had bought this setup, I think it's called Oculus, isn't it?
Oculus.
She had sent me this thing, my son has just bought this, is there any way I can you know, make it safer? And I said, yes, you can open the bin, throw it in. Because what this is actually doing, you need a 5G router to operate this. And as I said, those antennas, you can point them towards you know, which channel you want. So you could have a channel pointing at your child's head and cook them probably as fast as I've ever seen. I mean, this is the most ridiculous, dangerous technology I've come across. So it's beamforming directly from the router to the headset. I mean, you can, I mean, all sorts is going on here. You've got the 5G beamforming from the Wi-Fi. You've also got probably a huge magnetic field right in the kid's face. And you've also here, there's some sort of like optical radiation which can really affect the eyes. So yeah, just a massive bad idea from the start. But from what I've learned on this, it's, the metaverse is going to be highly addictive. I mean, if you think Facebook is addictive already, we've all spent hours mindlessly scrolling through Facebook. Well, that's collecting algorithms, it's learning all about everything about you. So with the metaverse, it can actually sense boredom. You know, it can pick up a sigh, or if your head drops a little, it can pick up that you're bored, and all of a sudden something really exciting will happen, you know, just to keep you in the game. So this will be very, very addictive, and once kids start it, you know, it's going to be great, but really bad for you. So I think it's time we steered our kids away from that sort of thing. So these millimetre wave technologies, people always say, oh, they haven't been tested on public. Well, I kind of disagree with that, because they use them in the airport scanners. It's the same technology, same frequency, same millimetre waves. And I think it's very evil, because thousands have to give their consent to be zapped by this technology every day for fear of missing their plane, really. And it's cunning and evil. Now, when I went to Thailand, I think I had maybe 6 flights. You know, it's like you have to stop here, jump on there. And I refused this every single time. And I simply said, listen, this is the job I do, and I know this is dangerous, and I'm not going in. My ex-girlfriend at the time lied and said she was pregnant. So they just give us a pat down instead of going through this. It's not essential, it's not, you don't have to go through this, just say no. Because this is leaning more towards your ionizing radiation, which causes a lot of harm and cell death. Should we have a break? It's 8 o'clock.
Okay, Ian, over to you for
okay.
that.
Right, so where were we? We were talking about these nasty machines in airports, were we? Now, these people here, I think they're called Department of Homeland Security, aren't they? Something like that. The people who operate these machineries and have to stand next to it all day, apparently they're dropping like flies, and there's big, massive insurance cases and court cases going on because they won't pay out. Yes, with the trees being felled. Now, this is what happened in Sheffield. 17,500 trees removed, part of a 2.2 billion contract with Amy. Other areas affected include Bournemouth, London and the Isle of Wight. Now, this concerned me a little bit when I saw this. Everyone in South Wales was talking about it. There was a strange aeroplane spotted flying low all day around South Wales, a little Cessna airplane. Now, I got really upset when I found out about this, because I did a lot of study in Bournemouth for a group there, and this was the very start of it. So what in the Wales Online paper and in the paper, sorry, the explanation was this plane was mapping geographically marshland areas, or some it was lies basically. This is what they're really doing. They're tree mapping, ready for 5G rollout. So it's RVL Group and Blue Sky in association with Ordnance Survey. You can look these guys up. And this is the computer program they use. They fly low, and the computer program puts a little circle around every single tree, and then the program will work out which trees need to be felled in which area to make the 5G network more efficient. Okay, I'll talk about HARP a little bit next, because it's kind of something people kind of have forgotten about a little bit. So, anyone heard of HARP? Have you all heard of it? Yeah. Well, HARP is a High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. There's a picture of one there. It's the largest ionospheric heater in the world, capable of heating 1,000 square kilometre area to over 50,000 degrees. So that's kind of like, that's what the sun does. So they're kind of playing God with this technology. And by using HARP, the military can focus a 1 billion watt pulsed radio beam into our upper atmosphere. This procedure will form extreme low frequency waves and send them back to Earth, allowing us to see into the Earth, detecting anything from oil reserves to underground missile silos. So there's a bit of information there which should ring some alarm bells. Remember I told you earlier about how the lower the frequency, the further it will travel. Well, here they've got extreme low frequency, a ridiculous amount, 1 billion watts of power behind it, focused straight up, and what happens? It bounces back off. Bounces back off what? I mean, in the Bible, I don't know whether we've got flat earthers here, but in that theory they say we have a dome, a firmament. But whether they call it the atmosphere, but they're blasting this frequency up and it bounces back off. So what I was saying about satellites, you know, they use very, very high frequency, and they're trying to tell us that that frequency goes through the ionosphere when this can't. You know, something isn't right there, is it? So what they're doing, they can use this as almost like an X-ray. They can X-ray the Earth, and they can find oil, gas and things like that by using this technology. There's all the HARP technologies all around the world. There's all the heaters. I mean, there's quite a lot of them, and they are basically controlling the weather. Do we have any in the UK? Yes, we have 2, as far as I know. This is the one in Aberystwyth in Wales, and I think it goes on for several football fields full of antennas. And this is one in Menworth Hill, which is in Harrogate. I mean, look at those things, crazy technology, which is manipulating the weather. This is kind of like what the sky looks like when this technology is running. We all know what's going on with the chemtrails. They're spraying metallic particles, barium, strontium, aluminium, and then what they seem to be doing is blasting these chemtrails with this frequency, and it causes it all to disperse and create a blanket cloud. Apparently they can fiddle with the frequencies and the ionic charge of these particles. You can have it like holding a negative charge, which, just like a salt lamp, will attract water, it'll attract moisture, and obviously it'll rain. Or they can make a positive charge, which will push moisture away and cause a drought. But that's basically the frequency bouncing from back and forth off the Earth, which causes that like effect in the clouds, and it causes it all to disperse into cloud cover. With the UK, it's pretty easy apparently for them to modify our weather here because of the jet stream, and HARP technologies can affect and rearrange it. Does anyone remember what happened in the Somerset levels and you know, extreme flooding? Acres and acres and acres of farmland completely destroyed, and you have to wonder why. And then these people come along. So obviously what they've done, they've used HARP technologies, they've scanned the ground, they've found their oil or their gas, and then they flood the land, so the farmers have to sell their land cheap, and along comes fracking. So if you work backwards, you can see the agenda behind it. Okay, I talk about police because I think something very wrong is happening with the police. Like back in the 1970s, they were the pillar of society, very well respected, and then something just kind of went wrong. I mean, police nowadays, they're full of brutality. And do you remember this guy? Do you remember his name? Damilola Taylor. So, as you can see, he's been served and protected well by the police. This guy is just minding his own business, walking past on a mobile phone. I mean, there's something wrong with the police, and it's not their attitude. I mean, again, being served and protected on the side of the road there for everyone to see, massive rage. So what's going on? Why is there so much police brutality, dodgy, nasty frequency which they've got all the emergency services using? Now, this is Tetra. The Tetra pack goes on a policeman right in the middle of two very sensitive places for radiation. The heart, obviously, and the thymus gland, which is very sensitive to subtle energies. That's why you wear pendants over the thymus gland, crystals and whatnot. So what's different about Tetra? It has a unique pulsed repetition microwave radiation frequency. Remember what I said about pulsed? It's a lot worse. You can't have an immune response. So the frequency is 17.6 Hertz, which is a key biofrequency that interrupts beta brain waves. So what I'm trying to explain here is that frequencies can be used against us to manipulate our minds, and there's all sort of patents, and you look at the TV, flicker and all the rest of it. So Tetra is persistent. It runs on full power 24/7. It operates at 380 megahertz, which is more penetrative to tissues and buildings. Tetra is elliptically polarized signal, which in studies have more pronounced biological effects. So this guy, Dr. Ross Adey, he was the chief researcher on the Pandora project. If no one's heard of the Pandora project, it was a secretly run CIA project where they were blasting people at distance with frequencies, I think it was from 0 to 80 hertz, where the human being can be controlled. So just by manipulating the frequencies, they could control people's emotional state. So the Tetra system causes ELF zombification by massive release of calcium ions in the cerebral cortex and the nervous system. But the activated calcium ions also cause massive hormonal disturbances which lead to frenzied imbalances, emotional and physical states. Now, somebody told me that there was an inquest into Tetra after there was a drugs bust. Apparently, if you can imagine, all these police in the back of a van, and it's kind of like a Faraday cage. All of their Tetra networks are all buzzing, and a policeman apparently went out of the van and just punched a member of the public and killed him. That's the story. I don't know whether it was true. And then there was an inquest into Tetra. So the Bridge End suicides, anyone remember the Bridge End suicides? Well, I think this has a slight link. I mean, nobody talks about them anymore, but it's still going on. I still have people contact me when there's a new death. Apparently 136 people now since 2007, and most of them happened within a year or two. So in Bridge End, it has a high concentration of Tetra masts. You have the police headquarters there, and a huge Tetra mast. On average, larger, more powerful masts like this are usually around 800 metres from homes. In Bridge End, there's a large mast is only 540 metres from homes. 3 transmitters are within 200 metres, 13 within 400 metres, and as many as 22 within 500 metres of homes. Now, what I've learned about frequency is that 2 frequencies can converge and cause a hotspot. I think this might be happening in Bridge End, which is exacerbating the symptoms. But this is kind of interesting too, this guy. He's saying more disturbing is that the low frequencies that characterise the GSM Tetra pulsing are close to those at which it is known that human mood and behaviour can be influenced in a number of ways, ranging from depression, docility to rage. Depending on the kind or frequency of modulation used, it's actually possible to induce sounds, even words, intracranially by appropriate modulations of the microwave signal. So that's your voice to skull technology, which some of you might hear about. Now, it's interesting in the Bridgend suicides, apparently every single person died in exactly the same way, hung themselves from a rope and was found on their knees, all in the same sort of predicament. So effects on health with all this radiation, the main thing which it causes is free radical oxidative stress, and it affects the whole body, mostly the brain and the immune system, but it can lead to all these diseases. With the heart, it can cause atherosclerosis, which is inflammation, kidney disease, skin disease, multi-organ, mostly the immune system, lungs, eyes, brains, it affects everything. So it's the free radicals are basically oxygen molecules which have lost an electron. So they can build up in the body and can affect the health of cells, leading to overall health decline. This is interesting. We all know about melatonin. Well, it's your body's own antioxidant free radical scavenger, okay? Antioxidants mostly have an electron to donate. That's why they help out with free radicals. So this guy, he found that breast cancer cells were inhibited by melatonin. In 1988, Dick Stevens at Battelle first proposed that breast cancer might originate from ELF, electromagnetic field-induced inhibition of melatonin. And what do they do to test women nowadays? The mammograms, they blast you with radiation, which is actually a cause of breast cancer. So stay away from doing that. Through controversial, the oncostatic effects of melatonin and its inhibition by light and EMF exposure at night has since been confirmed in more than 6 laboratories. So what it's saying there is your melatonin is largely dependent on dark. It has to be very dark when you sleep, and it's another reason to switch put your phone in aeroplane mode, so all wireless activity. Nothing should be affecting your melatonin production at night, and obviously when you're in deep sleep, that's regenerative sleep, which your cells are repairing and rebuilding. So regenerative sleep and melatonin is very important. So with regards to on a cellular level, what happens is you have this, I don't know how you say that, rouleau blood formation. And it's basically where your blood cells become unhealthy and they start to cling together. If you look at the healthy cells, it almost looks like they're glowing with some sort of energy. Well, that's what they call your chi or your life force. It's a kind of electricity which makes the cells repel each other. So what happens when you're around Wi-Fi and things like that, obviously the signal is passing through your body. It's making your blood cells lose their electrical energy, if you like. So they lose their ability to repel and they start clinging together in rouleau formation. And when your blood is like that, they call it sticky blood. It causes low oxygen transportation, inflammation and acidic blood, which are all your markers for the start of psychological effects. Now, I see this all the time, and it is a big problem because it really can mess your head up. You've all heard of placebo, where you take a sugar tablet and you might think it's something else. There's also nocebo, and like I said, I see this all the time. It's kind of like the power of the belief systems, and it mostly goes on with smart meters installed in the home or living near a phone mast. Now, with customers I've spoken to who live near a phone mast, as soon as they know it's there, every single headache, every twinge, will be blamed on that mast. Even if it's not in, dangerous levels, it will be blamed on that mast. And it's the same with a smart meter. Once people have a smart meter installed, every ailment will be blamed on that smart meter. And I've actually visited some homes where they're saying, oh, we've got this smart meter, it's driving me mad, I can't sleep, I've got tinnitus, I can this, that and the other. And I go there and measure the smart meter, it's not even emitting anything. So, you know, it can cause a psychological effect just through it being there, if you know. So there's also blue light, which is a problem from all this tech. When I did my research on blue light and had a good look at it, I was quite shocked, to be honest. Digital eye strain syndrome is becoming a big thing. Headaches and migraines, mostly caused from the blue light. And it disrupts the circadian rhythm. I mean, when it comes to the evening time, there's not any blue light in the natural spectrum, so to get it from your laptop or your phone, it's kind of telling your body that it's still daytime and you have trouble sleeping and all sorts of stuff. But as you can see, the blue light penetrates right back to deep inside the retina, and it can cause macular degeneration, which is very, very uncomfortable, and from what I've learned is not nice at all. This is another thing which I'd like to mention. I mean, the use of Bluetooth, it has some applications are very dangerous. I've seen a Bluetooth nappy where it texts you to say your baby has wet itself. But this is another ridiculous application for Bluetooth, is these AirPods, which all the kids are using nowadays. Now what's happening here, only the one earpod receives the signal and it sends it to the other. So, I mean, where is the path? It's going straight through your brain. So, Bluetooth technologies, you know, some of them aren't too bad, but some have got really ridiculous applications. Okay, so we're on to solutions. Yay. We'll end on a high note. So what have we got in the bag? Tinfoil hats. Is it nice how we thought of this cat as well? But no, there are things we can do to stop it. Right, we'll start with the easiest, and that's the blue light. On your laptop, there's a really good app called Flux. It's free. You download it, and what it does, it works on your clock. So once it gets to like 7 o'clock in the evening, it gradually starts to reduce the blue light until you look at your screen and it's kind of got that orange glow. So at night time, obviously, the orange glow of a candle or a fire, or like these lightings, a natural orange glow, that's what you need at night, not the blue light. The other option is blue light filter glasses. I've got some here. I found a really good company in the UK who we get the glasses from. They're very effective, and also I would advise maybe using these driving at night because all of the street lights now are turning to LED. A lot of car lamps have got that really annoying blue tint to them, so maybe used for driving as well might be a good idea. Now this is something, when I do the home radiation assessments, you know, people know I'm coming and they tidy a few things up electronically, but they all overlook lighting, which can be quite a big thing to look at. The long strip lights are really bad for dirty electricity. But these lights here, the typical energy-saving light bulbs, they're pretty bad as well. They flicker, they switch on and off really fast, so they can, you know, trigger fits and things like that in young people. So throw away your energy-saving, flickering, high radiation, and they give off a lot of blue light. And they're also full of toxins, aren't they? If you were to smash one of those light bulbs, is it mercury, isn't it? Which is, apparently, if you were to smash one, you're meant to phone poison control because that's like mercury levels are ridiculous. So they're toxic in many ways. So the best thing to do is replace them with the old style incandescent bulbs, much lower radiation. I remember going to one home radiation assessment, and the lady had a huge chandelier, and she had changed one bulb. And I went around it with my meter, not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. Got to that one bulb which she changed, and it went off the scale. And obviously some light bulbs are literally 2 or 3 feet from your head. So replace them with the old style. You've got the natural orange glow, which is natural for the evening. These old incandescent light bulbs, they haven't really been phased out. They're still available. But they're now called rough service bulbs. So you can go on eBay, we sell them on the website, but we've only got the bayonet type. On eBay you can find them all now, the E27, whatever the fitting is on the end. They're called rough service bulbs, much healthier for your home. Wi-Fi, this is kind of like my speciality. So Wi-Fi, the best thing to do with your Wi-Fi is hardwire it. Now it's sometimes not that easy. Sometimes you have to go into the settings of your Wi-Fi router and actually click disable. Just plugging it in sometimes isn't good enough. You have to look at that little flashing light and make sure it goes off. With my Wi-Fi router, 24-hour plug-in timer is what I use. Very handy. Costs a £5. Now that will reduce your Wi-Fi radiation by up to 80%, because what I do is I set mine to switch off at midnight and it comes back on at 7 o'clock in the morning. So all the time I'm sleeping, I know my Wi-Fi router is off and it's not affecting my circadian cycles, my melatonin production, things like that. You can use an orgonite pyramid, becoming popular, to put next to a Wi-Fi router, or shungite is another thing you can put next to it. But the best thing is a Faraday cage. Now, if you Google Wi-Fi router Faraday cage, the first thing that comes up is some tech dude who's bought one off Amazon, not mine, and I think the title of the video is Wi-Fi Faraday cage, the worst money I've ever spent, and this tech guy is explaining, well, a Wi-Fi router emits a wireless signal which is required, so I put the Faraday cage on, it blocks it and it doesn't work anymore, and it's rubbish and I've wasted my money. Well, that's kind of like the Amazon product is a full Faraday cage, but what I did, I thought, well, why not make a partial Faraday cage? So it blocks some of the signal, but lets a little bit through. So I did a little test. At this point, we already made Faraday cages for smart meters, which are very effective. And it just so happened my parents were upgraded a router. My mother sits here, my father sits here, the Wi-Fi router is there. I looked at the Wi-Fi router that they were getting and I thought, I can't have my parents sat that close to this. About 2 years ago, so I developed my own Faraday cage, designed and developed by myself. I fiddled about with materials and mesh until I got it right. But I did a test, how much signal can you block from a Wi-Fi router and it will still work? Do you know what the answer was? 98%. 98%. So I've got a little video here. Our website has been quite, I think it's being censored, algorithms. We don't get, so we do a lot of our business through Etsy and eBay because they can't really censor those things. This is our Etsy page and there's a video on here, look. Don't.
Oh, hello. Oh, hello. That's impressive.
And that's my parents' router, the router I was just talking about. So what this has done, look, it's just popped over the top.
Okay.
The bottom is open, and there's a little bit of a cutout there for the wires to enter. So it's not fully enclosed. If I fully enclosed this, it would stop the Wi-Fi router from working, and it would be pointless. But in our test, like I said, 98% reduction, and it still works fine. In my home, I've got my Wi-Fi router caged, and I would not tell any difference whether the cage is on or off. On my laptop, it says full signal strength. And in our tests, I've also got upstairs a TV. I don't watch TV, by the way, it only plays YouTube. But that TV has a Fire Stick, is it called? And that's connected to the Wi-Fi router. So we've had 2 laptops, both upstairs, and the TV continuously linked to the Wi-Fi router, which is only giving off 2% signal, and it all works fine. So what I'd suggest everyone do, I mean, without blowing my own trumpet, this Faraday cage is possibly the best EMF protection device there is, without blowing my own trumpet, but that'll protect you because you're in your home around your Wi-Fi all the time. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You can have like 90% less of the Wi-Fi radiation flying around the house. So yeah, they average about £40. And what we do is we custom make these to what particular Wi-Fi router you have, because they're all different shapes, different sizes. So some might stand upright, some might lie down flat, some might be this way up.
We do that for mobile phones?
No, we've got a different product for mobile phones. But yeah, for a Wi-Fi router, a must-have. I'm very happy actually we've been with the sales of those cages, doing very well. I do mention Orgonite. Everyone's probably heard about Orgonite, haven't they? No. I'll go through it anyway, just in case. So this is me at the top of a mountain burying some Orgonite underneath a huge mast. Now, why am I doing this? Because I read a book called Operation Paradise by a guy called George Griffiths. Wow, I read this book and because the thing with Orgonite, some people slate us for selling it. They say it's like it doesn't work, you know, there's no evidence and whatever. But I do think there is something to Orgonite. Now, in this book by George Griffiths, it kind of explains how, kind of a New World Order scenario, they were putting up all this technology all around South Africa, and it was making everyone sick. So what this guy did in his book, he created a team of people, and he went all around South Africa, gifting the cell phone towers with Orgonite and recording the results in the weather and the ambient kind of energies. It was absolutely fascinating. So what is Orgonite? It's a man-made substance made with polyester resin, metal particles. It's meant to be 50-50. A lot of people don't use enough metal. And a piezoelectric crystal such as quartz. So Orgonite works by transmuting detrimental ambient energies and frequencies into a more coherent, structured and harmonious state. Orgonite pyramids are becoming popular to place next to Wi-Fi routers. A side view of Orgonite, and you can see the 50-50 mix of resin and metal particles, and adding to the magic is a quartz crystal. The reason why they put quartz in there is because it's piezoelectric. When you squeeze quartz, it gives off an energy. So when it's set in the resin and the resin hardens, it kind of constantly puts a squeeze onto that crystal, and then it's sucking in energy, transmuting it and kicking it back out again.
Excuse me, it's also got blue light as its emitting source.
I've heard that, yeah.
Earlier.
Apparently there's a website called Etheric Warriors, which has loads and loads of information on Orgonite. And I've read in there actually that some people take the Orgonite out of the moulds in the dark because they like to see that blue flash. Anyway, so there's also some experiments which are a little bit strange, which show there's definitely something going on with Orgonite. And what they've done here is just got an Orgonite puck. You can make them in muffin moulds, and they've put a glass of water on the top of it and put it in the freezer. And this is what it's frozen like. It's this mad vortex which is coming from the top of the Orgonite, kind of like pyramid kind of energy. Yeah. So what I've done here, I've taken one of our Orgonite pyramids and tried the same, frozen it. I'm not sure whether you can see that, but starting from here and going right to there is one big toroidal field with all spikes coming out of it.
So could I just say Victor Schauberger?
Yes, I mentioned Victor Schauberger. He's a quartz guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he does a spiral, analysis, and he does a lot more. He was just very, well, people saw him as an ignorant guy, but he was an actual lumberjack in Austria.
Very clever guy, yeah. Do you know
Very smart.
jet planes run on his technology.
Yeah.
So another thing which kind of proves orgonite works is plant growth. It makes plants go crazy. You can see all these raised beds here, and this one has had orgonite placed around it. So if you want to increase your yields and things like that when you're growing your own on your allotment, apparently it has that type of energy which makes plants grow. And this is a chem buster. I don't know whether you've heard of these. They found that orgon travels really well through polished surfaces, so you get the inside of a pipe, copper pipes projecting this energy up, and the orgon travels up into the atmosphere and apparently blows holes in all of this mess. I know because I've done it. So this is another thing I'd like to mention. As it's called, it's the most important thing you've never heard of, agnihotra. Who's heard of agnihotra? Anybody? One person, see? So this is something I teach. I've taught this for a good few years now. I usually teach at summer festivals, and it's kind of hard to explain, but I'll try my best.
Is it kind of agriculture?
No, it's a fire ceremony, and it's performed at sunrise and sunset. It's like a biorhythm. It belongs to no sort of religion or anything like that. It used to be practiced in every country of the world, but it kind of like it's a dying kind of technology. So the way you perform agnihotra, you start maybe half an hour before sunset, you get everything set up, you have a copper pyramid, and you burn cow's dung in the pyramid with ghee, and you make an offering of rice. I know that sounds a bit crazy.
No, it doesn't. But
it's also called homotherapy. Now what happens, there's an energy which is emitted from the pyramid. It travels 12 kilometers up into the biosphere, and this has an effect of 150 acres. So what it does apparently is any molecules floating around in the atmosphere which are radioactive, it immediately renders them innate. It completely cleans electrosmog, if you like. So this is well worth looking at. If you're sat in front of the orgonite pyramid, you're obviously absorbing all these bioenergies, but what is left over in the ash apparently is possibly the best remedy that is out there for the treatment of and protection from ionizing radiation. So it apparently contains all of the I think there's 95 elements on this earth, and it contains all of them. Contains all the right minerals and elements to push radiation from the body. And when your people are treated for cancer, they get given a radioactive iodine. And apparently, because this contains such a pure iodine, the body lets go of the radioactive iodine in favour for this, and the body starts to heal. But the radioactive iodine, it stops production of white blood cells, which obviously for further illnesses is really required. Your white blood cells deal with infections and things like that. So very useful for radiotherapy, X-rays, MRI and CT scans, air travel, exposure to phone masts, smart meters, Wi-Fi and 5G. So this ash, we used to sell it because I used to do so many workshops, but sadly COVID put a stop to that. So there is places online you can buy the kits. Sadly we don't sell them anymore. So agnihotra ash can be taken 3 times daily to counteract and protect from disturbing frequencies from computers, Wi-Fi, deck phones, etc. Now, if you Google this or want to look on YouTube for how to perform agriculture, there's also a video on there with a young girl who has been vaccine damaged, and she is covered in boils and welts and warts. And she had rich parents. Parents went to every doctor in India, couldn't heal her, and then somebody suggested agriculture ash, and within 2 weeks she was completely healed. It's pretty magical stuff. So earthing is another thing you can do, exactly like bare feet on the floor. What we do in our company, we make our own earthing mats. We manufacture these ourselves, simply because when I did my research on earthing, I had to buy one the very next day. I thought, wow, I have to have one. So I bought one, and it lasted 12 months. It was so thin. And now, I should have brought it with me actually, I could literally rip it in half with 2 fingers. It's degraded so much. So when we made ours, we thought, right, we'll make like industrial strength earthing mats. The top of this, it's like chemical spill proof, scuff proof, tear proof, water resistant, you name it. These will last a lifetime. Special offer today, these are usually £35, but I'm doing them for £30 today. Special offer. And earthing is great. I mean, it says on here somewhere there was a guy who won a Nobel Prize. Where does it say? Grounding equalizes the electronic potential between the body and the earth, so the body becomes an extension of the earth's magnetic field. This potential cancels, reduces and pushes away electric fields from the body. So an earthing mat, in my opinion, is something which should be used with a computer more than anything. You have to be skin contact with it. And it's connected to a plug. As you can see, that it's only the top pin which is metal, which makes a contact. The other 2 are plastic, live and neutral. So it's only making contact with the earth, and you need to be skin contact with that, and it will push away any fields. But very good with a computer. Usually here I show, does anyone know David Wolf, that longevity expert guy? Usually here I show a video of him up on a stage. It's been removed from YouTube though. They had an earthing setup, and they had a woman holding like a probe, and real time on the computer it showed a graph of every frequency she was getting hit with. So she moves close to a lamp and a certain frequency goes up, moves close to a computer, a different frequency goes up. And then they had her touch an earthing mat, and all of the frequencies on this graph, there was about 10 of them, completely flatlined. I'm really gutted I can't show that video anymore, but it's completely disappeared from YouTube. So this is like before and after earthing, and that's kind of inflammation, what that camera is picking up. The use of an earthing mat has been shown by thermal imaging to reduce an electrical charge within a body to near zero. And obviously it works both ways. You know, you get healing energy from the earth. It reduces inflammation, things like that. Right, diet. I hope the veggies and vegans don't hate me for this, but I have to mention this because over the 9 years I've been in this business, if anyone ever calls me and says I'm really sensitive to EMF or I'm electrically sensitive, I question them. I really question them because it's my job. I have to work this out. Now, I would say the people who call me and tell me that they're electrically sensitive, I would say about 90% are vegan. Make of that what you will, but the results don't lie. And in my opinion, because I used to be vegan, I was vegan for 3 years, didn't do me any favours. But in my opinion, it's the lack of fat and cholesterol. You know, I think governments and media kind of demonise red meat, they demonise saturated fat, they demonise cholesterol. But all of these things kind of neuroprotective to the brain, especially cholesterol. There's some nutrients missing from the vegan diet, but me personally, I don't eat vegetables, I hardly ever eat fruit. 95–98% of my diet is meat now, and I've never felt healthier, so I think there's a possible agenda pushing everyone towards the plant-based
Sorry,
stuff.
excuse me, could I just interrupt? There's a case situation regarding Jordan Peterson. He's actually on a meat diet as we speak. So, you're qualifying yourself.
I mean, the carnivore diet, I mean, when I stopped being vegan, and one of the things that stopped me being vegan was I started getting into bushcraft and survival.
Yeah.
I started watching a show on YouTube called Naked and Afraid. And what they do is they get survival experts, strip them naked, chuck them in the wilderness and film it. Really interesting, but it teaches you a lot about human diet. I mean, if you put a human in its natural environment, take away shops and supermarkets, take away agriculture, put a human in the middle of the wilderness, and you will work out you're a carnivore. If you try and survive on plants, you can't without shops and supermarkets.
Or if you're Nepali.
Excuse me.
If you're Nepali.
Sorry, am I going to have to ask again?
Look, I'm terribly sorry, but
No,
Nepalis.
you're not
I'm terribly
the
sorry.
presenter.
I'm
He's
terribly
the presenter.
sorry. Nepalis have no vegetation on altitude. Point.
We pay
Yeah,
money to listen to
we'll
him.
have some time at the end for questions. But I felt very duped, to be honest, and I'm still a little bit angry that I was so duped, because I was at a health show every weekend for years, and all of this really rubbed off on me. Eat this, juice this, shove this up your bum. This, what they don't tell you about the plant-based diet is that anti-nutrients are in all plant foods. It's their defense mechanism. So anti-nutrients bind to nutrients and make them unavailable to you. And also, I was eating far too much fruit, and fructose is very hard for the liver to process. So I think diet has got a lot to do with it. I think, these people who are vegan and not getting any animal products, I think they're slightly lacking in cholesterol and saturated fats, which are needed to protect the brain. Okay, smart meters. I mean, they're being rolled out. Apparently they want every single home in England, Scotland and Wales to have them by 2020, 2 years ago. So they're failing massively. But these are the cages we make for the smart meters. Some people ask me, why have they got an earth lead and your Wi-Fi routers haven't? It's kind of like a safety feature, really. If that cage was to cut into a live wire, you'd have big problems. So it's kind of a safety feature. But an earth lead is not required on a Faraday cage if you're trying to reduce the radio frequency. It's used as a safety thing, but it will also reduce the electric field to near zero. That's what the earth lead does. If you remember the slide earlier with all the bank of smart meters, I mean, this is perhaps the only option you have is shielding fabric, shield the whole wall. Right, mobile phones. The biggest thing with mobile phones is proximity. Stop holding it to the side of your head. Use speakerphone, but without holding the phone. Does that make sense? Because, like I said, with a magnetic field in the iPad, if you turn the volume right up, then you're basically turning the magnetic field right up. So if you've got the volume right up on speakerphone and you're holding it in your hands, every time the other person speaks, you can have a big spike in electromagnetic field. So what I try to do is answer the phone, put it on speakerphone, and then just put it on the table so you can still hear people. Again, an air tube headset, excellent bit of kit, zero radiation. With the air tube headset, there's no wire, it's just air. So obviously there's no radiation going to your head. Aeroplane mode is very important, especially when you're sleeping at night. It stops all cellular communication Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, everything is switched off. And your alarm clock does still work, so that's something to do every night. There are a lot of products out there for mobile phones which in my opinion don't do anything. So there's kind of just two products I will vouch for. The one is called an R2L, it's a radiation to light microprocessor. This company contacted me from America, and we've been selling their products for a few years now, and it's one of the products which you can actually see it working. Now this is a microprocessor, and it captures excess radiation from your phone. It charges it on this chip here, and then when it has enough, it's called a capacitor, and a capacitor stores energy and then releases it all in one go. So the capacitor here is gathering excess radiation energy from your phone, and when it has enough, it flashes this little light. So you can actually quite see the physics and how it works. And on their website you have the tests where they have mobile phones in little pigeonholes, and a probe is coming down taking measurements, and it's perhaps the only product which has been proven to reduce the SAR, the specific absorption rate. I've got some over there. There's a shungite plate. These are self-adhesive and just stick to the back of your phone. Look. So I use one of those, and that's about the only two products I would vouch for, to be honest. Talking about shungite, what is shungite? Anyone? You all heard of shungite, didn't we? Yeah. So it's a black non-crystalline mineraloid consisting of more than 98% weight of carbon. It's unique in the way it's a diamagnetic material. So, for example, if you had a magnet on a piece of string and you had some shungite, it pushes the magnet away rather than attracting it. So it's quite a rare diamagnetic material. It's said to be over 2 million years old. Some people think it's like arrived on a meteorite, and other people say it's a rare form of plant which degraded over millions of years and formed this coal-like substance. And it's only found in one little place in Russia called Karalia. But there's not a shortage of it. There's thousands of tons in these deposits. So the shungite pyramid is a revolutionary shielding device for harmful electromagnetic radiation from computers, microwave ovens, TV sets, mobile phones, and other creations of modern civilization. And this guy, he wrote a book. He said a material actively interacting with electromagnetic fields of different natures, anthropogenic, high frequency, solar, geopathogenic biofields, and neutralizing their negative impact. I was just saying about geopathic stress. Yeah. And I went to a talk in, I think it was Glastonbury. It was very interesting, all about geopathic stress, and the guy was saying that 85% of modern day illnesses are caused by geopathic stress. And very interestingly, he told me that he does earth acupuncture on ley lines, and they also use shungite pyramids for earth acupuncture, the same as they do with the sticks. They usually use sticks and stick them in the ground. So the ecological potential of shungite is very wide. It realises in the process it's also used for water purification and air protection of people from electromagnetic radiation of different natures, increases the immune system of human beings and animals, has medicinal properties in relation to a wide range of illnesses. Crystals, I'm not really a big fan of myself, but you know, if I was to, there has been some rumours of crystals offering some protection from electromagnetic fields. So, over the years I've done a little bit of research, and that's my top 4, based on my own opinions. Shungite is at the top. Black tourmaline has been well known. Malachite and sodalite actively absorb radiation, so there's some good stones to look at.
Kunzite's very good. I found that
Don't know whether anyone's heard of this, but apparently, like back in Atlantean times and Egyptian times, they also had technology everywhere, and they had a solution for it. It's very hard to find information on this, but I think the guy is called Earthkeeper on YouTube. He has a lot of, James Tiburon his name is, he has a lot of information on this. And it's called a Metatronic shield, and it involves actually wearing different types of gemstones on your body. So on your left hand, you're meant to wear a single refractive gem. Most of the gemstones are single refractive, all of the quartz family. Single refractive, we've only got 2 or 3, diamond, garnet or spinel. On the right hand, double refractive, most of your crystals are double refractive, all of your quartz family, emerald, sapphire, ruby, amethyst, and 4 carats or more for the right hand, 2 carats for the left hand. And then around the neck, you're meant to wear lapis lazuli or malachite, which is a conglomerate. Now what this does, it's meant to have like a tri effect and create kind of like a force field around you and expand your auric field as much as it can go to offer protection. So 5G, what can we do about that? I've heard of lots of stories of people writing to their local MP and none of it ever goes anywhere. You know, they're all in the same club as that guy says, you know, and you just end up having some printed off rubbish. What I've been looking at with the 5G frequencies, they can't penetrate the walls of your house, so you're quite safe inside your house, but they may penetrate the windows. So I've been looking for around a year for a good quality window film which blocks RF, and they're all so expensive. And then recently I've got a friend who owns a printing business, and he's won a contract with the NHS to fit privacy window film in all of the hospitals. So when I looked at this privacy window film, I thought, that looks a lot like mylar. Mylar is the stuff they reflect light with, and hydroponics and things like that for growing plants indoors. It looks very much like mylar. Mylar is metallized and it blocks radio frequency very well. So I tested his privacy window film, which was about the 10th of the price of the RF blocking window film, and it works a treat. So I'm going to soon be stocking this window film on the website, and it will be much, much, much more affordable than, I think actually some people are purchasing the privacy window film and marketing it as RF blocking and increasing the price. So window film is one answer to stop that frequency entering our houses. As we all know, the trees scatter or stop the frequency, so why not plant trees in our gardens? Makes sense. Avoid town city centres. I mean, why do we go to city centres? The only reason I ever go to the city centre is to go to the bank. So just try and cut down how many visits you have. I'm trying to get this umbrella to market. I don't think it'll take long, but perhaps needs a bit of funding. So also it's important to keep an eye on these lampposts outside your house. You know, they've changed them all to the LED lampposts. Well, apparently there's a little solar cell on the top which basically tells the light when to switch on. And I'm not sure whether it's true, but what I've heard is all they have to do is unscrew that solar cell and screw on an antenna, and then it's 5G ready. So let's keep an eye on those. I don't know whether any of you are knowledgeable on community trusts. I'm a member of Universal Law Community Trust, and the way they fight back is very admirable indeed, using their own laws against them and their acts and statutes and all that sort of thing. So joining a community trust to write some letters on your behalf, something like that, would be a good idea. Get yourself involved with that Agnihotra if you can learn it. Get yourself a kit, and once you've got a kit you can make your own Agnihotra ash. You can have a limited supply of it. Increase your antioxidants, like I said, with all these free radicals. The free radicals are missing an electron, so what antioxidants do is donate an electron and allow the body to heal. Avoid brand new tech and Wi-Fi, just like I showed you the Y-gig routers and the Wi-Fi 6 routers. It's best to keep with what you've got and don't upgrade. I think a lot of people at the moment are being sold very well on fast, high speed, everything, you know, it's going to download in this amount of seconds. And I think if these companies were honest and said and called it high intensity radiation rather than high speed internet, whether they would sell as much. And obviously spend more time in nature. Get yourself a hobby which involves being in nature. I like fishing myself, and you know, when you're at the river or at a reservoir, you're far away from this technology. So stay away from city centres. Oh, what did that picture do there? You get the gist, right? I bought one off Amazon, and I think it was about £22 and it came with ball bearings.
And mine comes with a laser.
There you go.
There
So
you
what I'm trying to say here is, I mean, if this technology came around my neighbourhood, it would kind of be like, oh, there's a pigeon up there. Oh, I missed and hit that expensive looking box. Oh, sorry. You know what I mean? I think we have to take matters into our own hand. If nothing is being done about it, then here's one solution: just shoot it.
Just ask some advice from
Yeah.
Mr. Blumenfeld.
Like I said about letters, sometimes they say the pen is more mightier than the sword. So letters of accountability, I personally have seen great results. There was, I can't remember where it was a school somewhere, and I helped these people write a letter of accountability. It went to the headmaster, and it was basically worded that somebody has to be held accountable who has put Wi-Fi into every classroom of this school, and if it damages my child, somebody has to be held responsible. So instead of, I mean, if I was a headmaster, I would not want my name on that document, would you? So having your name on that document, the other option is to hardwire the whole school, and that's what they're doing. Another one is conditional acceptance. People understand how that works. I will accept this. These are my conditions. They've also always got their conditions, and tell them what yours are. And some of these letters carry the threat of prosecution and imprisonment. So say, for example, if you're a headmaster and you put your name on this form, if a certain amount of kids became sick, then you're liable. So that's one way to deal with it. I've just added this one in recently, supplements, because I think everyone wants to have like a quick fix nowadays. So as far as supplements go, you know your vitamins and minerals, everyone knows what keeps you healthy, but this is just like my little pick, if you like. For immune system, vitamin C and zinc work very well together. Anyone suffer from hay fever? I've had hay fever since I was 9 years old, and I've never ever taken anything which helps. Quercetin I've started taking this year, and my hay fever is practically gone. What quercetin does, it's naturally derived from sulfur containing foods like onions and things like that. But what it does, if you have toxins and stuff, it chops it up into little bits so your immune system can deal with it, and it helps push zinc into the cells. So these three together are brilliant for your immune system. Has anyone ever heard of methylene blue?
No.
I've recently studied methylene blue, and it blew my mind. I thought, how is this kept secret from the people? What it does, basically, it's a dye. It was invented, this guy invented it to, I think he was dyeing denim, blue jeans with it. And then further along the line, chemists kind of looked at it and thought, well, this has an interesting makeup. Let's see if it can kill parasites. It's very good at killing parasites. What they use it for is to dip it in a fish tank. the fish tank goes completely blue, and the fish are still alive, they're fine, it doesn't affect them at all. But it kills all fungus, parasites, bacteria. So this goes through your body, kills all the fungal spores, all the parasites. It's very protective to the brain, and it's an antioxidant. It also scavenges free radicals. It has electrons to donate. So for me, that methylene blue ticks every box. I've started taking it myself, just like a preventative dose of 2 or 3 drops of the blue in a glass of water, maybe once or twice a day. Some people are taking up to 20 drops, so it's very, very safe to consume. Lion's mane mushroom, that has got a lot of promise for people who are electrically sensitive. The amount of repair work lion's mane mushroom does to the brain is very impressive. There's a guy called Paul Stamets, who's a mycologist, and he's an expert in all this, and he's developed a protocol, if you like. It's called the Paul Stamets protocol, and what he does is niacin, which is vitamin B3, lion's mane mushroom, and psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms, obviously, small dose. And he's found really, really good improvements in all sorts of neurological damage, things like that. So the lion's mane mushroom, especially with his protocol, very effective. Melatonin, I'm not really sure how safe it is to supplement melatonin. I've never looked into it, but it's definitely something you should be aware of, because melatonin, like I said, it's your own natural antioxidant. It's very strong, and it floods the body every night, getting rid of oxidative stress and free radicals. Now the next one, nicotine. You might be thinking, what's nicotine doing up there? Well, have you ever kind of wondered how governments say vaccines are safe, pharmaceutical drugs are safe, but then they get your tobacco and write on it, smoking will kill you and all. Have you ever kind of think that's a little bit weird? Well, if you really look at tobacco, it is one of our most revered herbal remedies, healing plants that we have. Nicotine is an alkaloid, and it is very neuroprotective. My uncle died of Parkinson's, and when we went in to see the specialist, he said to me that you never see people who smoke who get Parkinson's, Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's because nicotine is such a beneficial medicine for neuroprotection. And also, all the people who I question who are electrically sensitive, do you smoke? No. Maybe have something to do with it. But nicotine is also something people, you don't have to smoke. I'm not encouraging everyone to smoke. But it's also something which can be taken in a pill form. I think it's like some students are actually taking it as a nootropic, because nicotine helps cognitive function. When you're speaking, it helps you flow. So nicotine is a substance which has a bit of interest, and obviously your antioxidants. But with your food, you know, I can't tell everyone what to eat, but I would be wary of still getting some animal fats. And I know some people might be vegan minded as well, so they don't like the cruelty and all the rest of it, but it is very important. What I do is I buy expensive butter. It's non-pasteurized from grass-fed cows, so butter has got all the good fats in it that basically you need. And I would suggest low carb, because carbs always turn to sugars, don't they? And grains, I really don't agree with grains. I think grains are probably the worst thing you can eat. They're meant for mice. Phytates, phytic acid, and can cause a lot of mental disturbances. So the diet can be quite important. And that's the end. Thank you all for listening. But if you want to contact me or buy any products, our website is being censored a little bit. We don't get much traffic there at the moment. eBay and Etsy, just type in Wi-Fi Faraday cage. You can read all the reviews, watch the little video, it's all on there. I wouldn't really bother with Facebook anymore because I don't really go on Facebook. Our email address, lovetechnologies@hotmail.com, very easy to remember, and there is my mobile number if you want to contact me. And that's it. Thank you very much for coming and listening. If anyone is interested in any products, I didn't bring any of the Wi-Fi cages. We don't keep stock of these. They're all made to order simply because every Wi-Fi router is different. But this is perhaps very, very highly recommended out of everything is a Wi-Fi Faraday cage. You can contact us, eBay, Etsy, or the website.